Okay, okay. So we are going to be talking about how and why to track alcohol. And this is super important if you are someone who, especially in the summer, wants to enjoy a beer or a cocktail or whatever. I feel like drinking is a little bit more common during the summer when we're traveling more. Maybe we're out on the lake or like at a pool. And then throughout the year, yes, there's like holidays and special occasions, but summer seems to be where a lot of clients kind of struggle with their alcohol intake. So, just want to give like a little bit of background before we jump into calculations. But alcohol is actually a macro. So, a lot of people don't know this. Technically, it is the fourth macronutrient and it provides just by itself 7 calories per gram. So, this is where it gets confusing because it doesn't give us any nutritional value. So it's not recognized in most tracking apps. And when you look at like a can of White Claw and it says 100 calories, it's not actually like calculating those alcohol calories as well. So this is why like we need to be intentional about tracking our alcohol intake. Otherwise, it's going to get to the point where you're really frustrated because it looks like you're hitting your macros all throughout the week. We can zoom out and look at the whole month and you're like, "Coach, I smashed my macros. I did fantastic. I stayed with my calories, but you never tracked your alcohol." So, think about how easy it is to add up those calories when alcohol itself is 7 calories per gram. It's gonna be a lot, okay? So just think of alcohol as an empty calorie. So it's there, it provides no nutritional value, but it is energy, okay? So that's why A, we have to track it. And B, we have to make sure when we think of our calories as a bank account, we're spending most of our calories on those nutrient dense foods that are actually going to give us carbs, fat, and protein before we budget and spend on alcohol. Okay. So, kind of as a good rule of thumb, if you aren't meeting your goals for the day, including fiber, you probably shouldn't be planning to include alcohol as well. And I'm going to show you guys how we can actually like include it and still hit our protein goal and our fiber goal. So the way that we're going to track alcohol is we're going to track it as a carb or track it as a fat. Now, most of us have a lot more wiggle room in our carbs than we do in our fats. So I prefer just to track it as a carb. Okay. If you are someone that has more room in your fats and you want to track it as a fat, you totally can. It's just very simple math. So let's take as an example 1 shot of 80 proof vodka. So that is roughly like a 1.5 ounce pour. And it's going to be roughly 96 calories. Okay. But how are we going to track those calories? We're going to track them as a carb. Okay. So we're going to take 96, we're going to divide that by 4, and that's going to give us 24 grams of carbs. So if you're thinking like, wow, 24 grams of carbs, like that's a decent amount. That's like half a bagel right there that you just drank in 1 shot. And a shot goes back a lot quicker than a bagel. So just kind of keep that in mind. And then if you wanted to track it as a fat, again, you're going to do the same math. You're just going to take 96 and divide that by 9 because remember, fat gives us 9 calories per gram. So you would then track that as, we would just round up, track it as 11 grams of fat. Okay. Now, if you really want to get fancy, you can track it as a combination of both carbs and fats. But that does tend to get a little bit confusing. So as you can see in the note here, I personally just always track it as a carb because it's really, really simple. So I gave you some examples that are already done, and some of you have already started like tracking your alcohol intake in MyFitnessPal, and you can see that a lot of people have already done this math and like made it as an entry in there for you. So you may not even have to go and like create your own. Just make sure that the math is mathing. Like make sure that it makes sense when you look at it. Okay. So here's some examples of like your hard alcohols. And then if you continue scrolling, we have wine. So wine and beer are typically a lot more calorie dense than something just like a clear liquor. Okay. So if you're having, let's say, for example, like a Barefoot Moscato, typically it's a 5 ounce glass. Now I've seen some people on Instagram, like if you're at home drinking, it's really easy to not have like a standard pour when you're at home. Typically, if you're out, you're going to get a 5-ounce pour of wines. You're going to get that like 1.5-ounce shot. That's pretty standard. And then a beer is usually like 12 ounces unless you're getting like the tall boy. But it'll tell you on like the bottle or the can. So keep in mind, if you're pouring at home, you're probably pouring more than 5 ounces of wine. Just throwing that out there. But if you're out at a bar and you get a 5-ounce glass of Moscato, that's going to be like roughly 130 calories. So again, just take that 130, divide it by 4, and track it as a carb. That's going to be the easiest math for you to do. But you can always track it as a fat as well. And these examples are already kind of built in for you. So that White Claw can, yeah, it says there's no carbs, but it's 100 calories coming from alcohol, and we got to track that somehow. So that's actually going to be 25 grams of carbs. Okay. That hurts a lot more than like the 0 or the 2 that's on the little nutrition label on the can. So also we have to keep in mind mixers. Okay. So even if you're like, all right, I'm in a deficit this summer, but I still want to have fun. So I'm going to just go get like a shot of tequila and I'm going to put it into like a lemonade or something. You got to track that lemonade too, because chances are that has a boatload of carbs in it. So just kind of think about those things. And if you're looking for lower calorie options, you can always do a diet soda. You can do a tonic water. When I was in undergrad, my drink used to be Tito's and tonic. Exercise science girls, we knew those low calorie hacks. You could always do like a sparkling water or LaCroix. And then actually some of my bodybuilder friends, when they go out, they actually bring like Mio or like a flavored water packet. And that's what they do for their mixer. So you can get creative. You can make it a little bit more calorie friendly when you're thinking about those mixers. Just remember, we have to track the alcohol, and it has to be tracked as a carb or as a fat. So if you know that you're going to be going out this summer, let's say you're going out in the evening, and you know you're definitely having 2 glasses of wine. Like you're a wine girly, you're going to have 2 glasses of wine, okay? So you need to just assume that you should probably subtract and like pre-bank 60 grams of carbs. So in order to not go over, you need to know what your carb limit is for the day. So let's say your carbs are set at 200. You wake up, you know you have plans for that night. You know you're going to have 2 glasses of wine. So really, your carb bank is no longer at 200 for the day. It's at 140 because you already have pre-scheduled 60 grams of carbs for the evening just in your glasses of wine. Okay, so really be cognizant of that, because there is nothing more frustrating than believing that you're in a calorie deficit, you're adhering to those macros, but you're not tracking your alcohol, because you're not actually in a calorie deficit at that point if you're not tracking your alcohol and you're not tracking those mixers, okay? Always, as a rule of thumb, when you are planning to drink, make sure that you are intentional with your food before you go out. So make sure that you are hitting that protein goal within like 90% of where you should be, and your fiber goal as well. The reason we want to make sure we're eating before we're going out is because the drunk munchies hit so hard, and you will never hit your macros when you are making drunk decisions. You're going to reach for the pizza. You're going to reach for like the Cheetos or the pizza rolls or the ice cream, and that's not going to give you protein. It's not going to give you fiber. So just those two are typically the ones that people have a really hard time meeting when we're having those like drunk snacks in the evenings or when we're going out. Protein and fiber are the ones we really need to be intentional with during the day before we go out, and then we mindfully enjoy. Okay. Especially if you know you're going out, just pre-track those drinks in advance. You probably have a go-to drink, whether it's wine, like I mentioned earlier, or Tito's and tonic, like I used to do. Track those ahead of time. Be realistic with yourself, track ahead, and then make sure the rest of your day fits into what you're planning on for later. If you end up drinking less than you tracked, awesome. You can fit in a snack in the evening, okay? So it's really all about being intentional Because if you just kind of fly by the seat of your pants and you don't track your alcohol, you just drink as much as you want, you're never going to see results inside of that calorie deficit.